Hey guys, Patrick here in Southwest Fort Worth. Now, I was out here the other day, and of course, if you keep a fish room, you're gonna want to have a good working hose. And I came out, I looked at my hose, and it was leaking. But you see right now, this bad boy is repaired. Working just fine now. So, as it was leaking though, I realized that this was outside of my well house. I couldn't fix this. I'm pretty resourceful, but I didn't know where to begin. So I had to call up my buddy Roberto, and he came out. He's a plumber by trade, and he came and helped me fix this faucet. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna video him fixing the faucet. We'll do a little voiceover, because if somebody else has some kind of faucet repair issue, it'd be nice to go and have a licensed plumber to show you how to do it. And after I've seen how he does it, I thought, well, if I had the tools now I got the know-how to go and fix a faucet. So let's go ahead and check out this faucet repair.
All right guys, so here we have a leaking 1/2-inch copper line coming through the brick on a faucet on the back of the house. You can see it spraying here out of the top where the kink is on the line. So here I'm removing the hose just to get it out of the way. You want to make sure that the obstructions are out of the way when you start working on it. And what I'm about to do here is I am chipping out the brick around the problem area, just so I'll have enough room to cut this copper line out. I'm not cutting the whole line out, it's just the section that is leaking right now. And I'll put a description down below of the tools that I used for this job. Right now I'm using a chipping hammer, which you can either, if you want to purchase one for future use, you can go to Harbor Freight if you have one and just get a cheap one. You don't really need anything like what I have. That's more for everyday use. I'm a service plumber, so I use this thing all the time. Make sure that if you have hearing protection, go ahead and use that, because your ears will definitely be ringing if you don't use them afterward. Like I did here, I pulled up my toolbox to sit down just because my knees were on the ground and I was getting tired of just kneeling over. So grab something to sit on, be comfortable. As you can see here, I've removed all the brick that was needed, and here are my cutters. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going behind where that kink is, maybe about 1/2 inch to 1 inch, and I'm cutting right there so I can take the whole section off. So when you're messing with copper, when you cut it initially with the tubing cutters, which there's many different kinds. I have these right here specifically that have a reaming tool on them, which is going to look like a little end of a pencil like that. So what that does, you go inside the copper and it actually shaves the end of it on the inside, because when you cut it, it's going to look like the inside of this copper pipe right here. It has a little lip on it, and what that does, it causes turbulence inside of there when water's coming through, and over a period of time it may not, sometimes it does though, it'll cause a pinhole right in this area, because all the minerals and any kind of metal that's in the pot or in the water can just start eroding the pipe away right there. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing any kind of repair like this right here, or any copper water repair. Coming out of the pipe, making it difficult to solder the new parts on. What that does is when you have water sitting in the pipe or coming out of it, as you heat it with your torch, it creates steam inside of that copper. And when there's steam, what happens is that steam will blow the solder out of the joint that is supposed to be soldered together, and you won't get a complete seal around it. And then you also want to make sure that behind the area that you're soldering on, make sure that there's no insulation there or any type of flammable materials, because you don't want to catch your house on fire. So as you'll see at the end of the video, the house is okay. I didn't burn down Patrick's house. So here also what I'm doing is I'm applying flux to the copper line. And what Flux does is it helps clean the pipe even after you have used sandcloth or emery cloth to clean the copper. So it gets rid of all the oils or any kind of surface dirt that may be left on the copper pipe. And then also what it does is it helps the solder get sucked into that joint that needs to be mended together. As you can see in this video, you can see that water dripping from the front just because there was so much water volume still left in the pipes. So in this case, what you can do is you can get a wet and dry shop vac and suck this water out just by placing it over the pipe and holding your hand over the end so it creates a good seal. And just turn the shop vac on for a few minutes, and then you need to work fast, because if this is happening and the water hasn't stopped completely, then you know you're only allowed a certain amount of time before that water starts dripping out again. But you can see here where you can see the Flux here, C-Flux. So we typically get this stuff at the supply house. I don't believe that Home Depot or a hardware store is going to carry that type of Flux. They may have Flux, which is it's the paste Flux, so it's like a brown color. And then you also have Aqua Flux, which is more of a almost like an off-white color. So here we're going at it again, trying to solder this male adapter on. Now the reason I'm doing a male adapter on here is so that this is serviceable later on. The one we took out, as you'll see later on, was soldered onto this copper line, and there's no way for you to actually remove it easily and then just put a new faucet on here. Now make sure that when you get ready to put the new faucet on, that you use some Teflon tape, which you can get just about anywhere. You can go to Walmart and get it. But if you're going to the hardware store to get all these parts, you might as well just pick everything up while you're there. But if you're like me, you'll make about 2 or 3 other trips to the hardware store because you forgot something. In this case, I think we went to the Home Depot about 3 or 4 times. So don't feel bad if you have to do that. So I've got the Teflon tape on there, and then just from being a plumber and doing this every day, I always put Teflon tape, and I'll put thread sealant on here. Now a lot of people think that, I know a lot of these can say that they're thread sealant, but mainly what this does is it lubricates the threads so that you can get a good tight fit on here when you thread the faucet on. That's what I'm doing now. So I was able to tighten it quite a bit with my hand, but I'm just going to snug it up some more with my pliers here. I use smooth jaw pliers just because I don't want to mar this brand new faucet up. That's just kind of a pet peeve that I have. I want things to look neat and clean when I'm done. So that's the only reason I'm using it. If you don't care about that, then you can just use regular old slip joint pliers, which is what I have in my left hand. But I didn't need them. Alright, so the faucet's on now. It's ready to be used. So now we just got to turn the water back on and we'll check it all out. Oh, I forgot about this part. This is where we still had a leak on the coupling in the back, so I had to redo that because of the residual water that was in the pipe. It wouldn't let me completely, it wouldn't let the solder completely seal. All right guys, so today what we have is we had a leak on an old valve that was on the back side of this house here. It was leaking from the kink right here. So what happened was the kink in this line caused turbulence with the water. So anything in the water, mineral deposits or any kind of metal in it, over time just erodes a small hole in either the bottom or the top part of this. So we had to cut it out. In order to do that though, we had to make an access in the brick here, and so I could get my tool in there to cut out the old copper, which is that. So what we did was, it's taped up now, but we have a 1/2 inch copper coupling back here underneath this wrap. And so what we did is we soldered that onto the existing pipe that stubbed out from the inside of the house. And we connected a new section of copper into that coupling to extend this out far enough to put in what we call a 1/2 inch male adapter. So the 1/2 inch male adapter does is it allows the homeowner to replace this valve by just shutting the water off to the house at the meter or the customer shut off valve, and just unthread this valve and thread a new one on, and then turn the water back on. So the old one was not threaded, it was soldered on, as you can see here. So there's no way for a customer, you know, to be able to do that. They'd have to call a company, plumbing company, to come out and actually do the work. So now that this male adapter's on here, the customer, you know, if they're handy, they don't have to call anybody to come do it. They can do it themselves. So